Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was at South by Southwest, and the comments that you're about to watch her make got Republicans very, very sensitive, very, very hurt. Take a look.
I think a perfect example of how special interests and the powerful have pitted white working class Americans against brown and black working class Americans in order to just screw over all working class Americans is Reaganism in the 80s when he started talking about welfare queens. Mm-hmm. So you think about this image, welfare queens, and what he was really trying to talk about was this, he was painting this photo, he's painting this like really resentful vision of essentially black women who were doing nothing, that were sucks on our country, right? And it's this whole tragedy of the commons type of thinking where it's like, because this one specific group of people that you are already kind of subconsciously primed to resent, you give them a different reason that's not explicit racism, but still rooted in a racist caricature. It gives people a logical reason to say, oh yeah, no, toss out the whole social safety net.
So we're gonna come back and show you how exactly right she is. And we'll give you even more facts about the different racist things that Ronald Reagan did. But first, the wonderfully amusing triggering of conservatives.
Right.
So they're like, she said something about our beloved Saint Reagan. Everybody get triggered, and so they did.
Yeah, so before I read you the trigger tweets, let me just remind you all that whenever someone complained or was upset over an unarmed person of color getting shot and killed by the cops, those individuals would be referred to as snowflakes by the right wing. But right now, the people that I'm about to read from are upset because they feel that their beloved Ronald Reagan was criticized in AOC's statements. So Ryan Severda, who writes for the Daily Wire, says socialist Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez suggests former President Ronald Reagan was a racist and claims he pitted white working class Americans against brown and black working class Americans to screw over all working class Americans.
Okay, I love that one. That's a perfect example because they never refuted. They only stated like, well, I mean, she criticized Reagan, so that's obviously crazy, right?
I know, you're gonna keep seeing that.
Okay, so no, not right. We actually have the facts on our side, and she even gave you a stunning example of it in his dog whistle characterization of African Americans in this country. But you ignored those facts because you caught some feelings. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if you guys know this at the Daily Wire, but facts don't care about your feelings.
Laura Ingraham. She wasn't alive when Reagan was elected in a landslide and reelected in a bigger landslide. Boo, my lord. AOC is brilliant. Obviously that's a typo, but my lord. All right, so there's this crazy thing called books that people read. So just because someone wasn't around during the time of something historical or something that made history doesn't mean that people don't learn about it. I mean, they definitely don't learn about it in history classes because history classes like to whitewash things. But if you do enough research, you'll find some of the statements that Ronald Reagan has made, which we're gonna show you in just a minute.
But their logic there is, or lack of logic is, well, he won big victories, so that proves he's not racist. Does it?
Didn't we just elect Trump? I mean, come on.
Right, and that was in the 1980s.
Larry Elder, watch AOC accuse President Ronald Reagan of uttering racism to screw over all working class Americans. Oh, so that explains how Reagan carried 49 states in '84. Black unemployment fell faster than did white unemployment. Black businesses grew faster than white ones, or white-owned ones.
So this is the kind of thing they say about Trump too. So if you catch, now I don't want to get into a whole history lesson because the right wing will be like, what history? About how what Paul Volcker did with the Fed rates and how that screwed over Jimmy Carter. It was the right thing to do for the country though. And it wound up being a boom in the Reagan years. So that economic boom had very little to do with Reagan, but he rode it into a landslide victory in '84. And yes, black unemployment went down as it did under Trump because of the economy he inherited from Obama. But that requires context and nuance. Whereas these guys are like, me think context is bad, right? Trump awesome, Reagan awesome. We can see it in the elections. But by that logic, isn't Obama awesome? Because he won 2 huge victories. He won the presidency twice. The economy and the stock market boomed under Obama. How about that? No, me no like Obama. Okay, so what happened? I thought we were talking about facts.
So one other fact that I wanted to share with you is how Reagan did with the black vote. So in 1980, he actually received 14% of the black vote, but that number dropped down to 9% in 1984. Just to give you some context about, regarding how popular or unpopular Reagan really was with the black vote. But I do want to note that Reader's Digest in the 1970s made a point to really sensationalize the notion of the so-called welfare queen. And Ronald Reagan utilized that in his campaigning. The first time he utilized that was actually in his 1976 presidential bid, and then he did it again in his 1980 campaign. Now, with that said, Lee Atwater, again, was one of Reagan's closest advisors. And you're gonna hear the type of thinking from Atwater in this next clip.
How abstract you handle the race thing. In other words, you start out, and now y'all aren't quoting me on this. All right, I won't hear. You start out in 1954 by saying by 1968 you can't say that hurts your backfire, so you say stuff like forced busing, states' rights and all that stuff. And you're getting so abstract now, you're talking about cutting taxes and all of these things you're talking about are totally economic things, and the byproduct of them is blacks get hurt worse than whites. Because obviously sitting around saying we want to cut taxes, we want to cut this, and we want is much more abstract than even the busing thing, and a hell of a lot more abstract than.
Okay, there it is. That was the Southern strategy explained. Lee Atwater was the top strategist for the Republican Party and for Ronald Reagan. So in the beginning, they used to say the N-word, as he said over and over there. He's like, well, then that became unpalatable. So then we went to forced busing and affirmative action. And that was a proxy for, we're the racist guys, you can vote for us if you don't like black people. And then even the busing got a little too obvious, so we went to states' rights. Now that's actually as old as time. Even Calhoun, a long time ago during the Civil War era, used to use states' rights. Of course, if you studied American history, no, it's not that we're in favor of just keeping slavery, it's that we care about states' rights. Well, which right do you want to protect? Owning slaves, right? So that's why you went to the language of states' rights. And then it even got so far that they were like, hey, look, if we cut taxes for the rich, that helps whites and it hurts blacks. You heard him say on the tape there, that hurts blacks. And so it became a proxy for racial animosity. And that is what Reagan utilized to get those victories that ironically Laura Ingraham and Larry Elder now brag about. So how did he use those things? Well, the welfare queen is a perfect example of it. Now, in reality, white people got welfare more than black people, but all the examples they used were black people. And then he would talk about young bucks who were eating T-bone steaks off of welfare. So all this imagery was all centered around African Americans and blaming them and getting people to vote that way. Then it gets way worse. You know, when he first launched this campaign, you know where he did for president? Right outside of Philadelphia, Mississippi. Now that's bizarre. That's a tiny place in the middle of Mississippi, not where you would launch a presidential campaign. You might launch it in your home state of California if you're Reagan, or in a swing state or something along those lines. Why Philadelphia, Mississippi? There was 3 civil rights workers who were murdered in that area. And he went and gave a speech about states' rights.
Jeez.
There's only one reason to do that. That is to plant your flag and say the Republican Party is now the party of racists. So if you live in Mississippi, you live anywhere in the South, you come vote for Republicans. Now, why that over the top? Because if you're following politics, that's brazen. There's no other reason to go to Philadelphia, Mississippi, right? The reason is, remember, the Republicans used to be the liberal party. And so the people in the South hated the Republican Party because it was the party of Lincoln. So it took a long time and heavy-handed action to convince them, no, don't worry, the Republicans are now the racists. And so the Civil Rights Act being passed by the Democratic Party and Lyndon Johnson, the Voting Rights Act being passed by Lyndon Johnson and the Democratic Party made a lot of those Southern Democrats who were racist angry. They're looking for a new party. So Reagan in 80 goes and plants the flag in Mississippi, says, we'll be your homeboys. We'll be the racist that you're looking for. That's who Ronald Reagan is. Then he went on to veto sanctions against South Africa.
Yep.
And they're an apartheid state. It crushed blacks in South Africa. He thought that was hunky-dory. His excuse was, well, if we don't do sanctions, maybe that'll work better. So doing nothing will work better than this. By the way, if you don't know, sanctions did work in South Africa, despite the fact that Ronald Reagan tried to stop them. You know, some Republicans will now disingenuously say, well, you know, he signed the legislation to make Martin Luther King Day. He did, because it was veto proof.
Right, he had no choice.
He argued against it day and night. He was like, I do not want Martin Luther King Day. Okay, that's who Ronald Reagan is. Okay, he's supporting apartheid in South Africa. We're having a conversation about whether this guy was racist. Okay, are you kidding me? And now, look, this started with AOC, right? So now some on the right are saying, did you know that AOC is an actress? First of all, preposterous.
Actress? Okay. Like, what does that even mean?
I don't know, like she's being controlled, okay? Now, no, why? Why? Think about it. Now, you know exactly who AOC is. We've gone through her whole story. Everybody knows her whole story because she's so much in the news, right? She was a bartender, but that's not it. She was actually, the reason Just Democrats thought she would make such a great candidate is because she actually worked in the community for free. And she would try to get education to the kids in her community, et cetera. Okay, so you know who she is. But why say a random thing like that? Because their hero is Ronald Reagan, who was an actor. And Reagan was controlled by the moneyed interests of the day. And you see it in the Michael Moore documentary where they whisper into his ear at Wall Street, now say this, idiot actor. Okay, that's not an exact quote. Okay, and they hired an actor to do the racist things that the Republicans wanted to do to capture the South, and it worked brilliantly.
Yeah, can I jump in on that? It's absolutely true. So when Reagan first started out in politics, he was actually relatively liberal on the issue of abortion at the time. And it wasn't until evangelicals got involved and those interests got involved that he dramatically changed course on that issue. So you're absolutely right in that he wasn't really an individual who stood for anything. He was an individual who's easily influenced by, money, political power, things like that.
I can go on and on. I'm just gonna, as quickly as I can, give you 4 more because this goes on. He slashed important programs like Comprehensive Employment and Training Act that provided needed assistance to black people. He sought to limit and gut the Voting Rights Act. That's another one. He tried to get a tax exemption for Bob Jones University, which was at the time a segregated college in South Carolina.
Are you calling him racist, Cenk?
Let me be super clear. Yes, I am. I'm definitely calling Ronald Reagan the racist that he most clearly is. Okay, look, Bob Jones, segregated. We don't want to let black people into our school, they're inferior. Ronald Reagan's like, awesome, let's get them a tax exemption. Let's get them extra benefits for being racist. We're having a conversation about whether Ronald Reagan's racist. One last one, Jesse Helms said that Martin Luther King's was perhaps disloyal to America, okay? He questioned Martin Luther King's loyalty. And Jesse Helms ran on a segregationist ticket back in the day, right? Guess who came to his defense? Ronald Reagan. He said, no, I don't question his sincerity. I'm sure that he really, it's not about race or anything. He, like me, he hated Martin Luther King for the right reasons and questioned his loyalty to America. What do you mean? So that's who Ronald Reagan is. Finally, I actually have tons of more facts, but we gotta wrap up. But that is overwhelming. So, but thank you to the conservatives who are so wonderfully stupid that they will bring up topics that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says or other progressives say, and they go, can you believe this? And it sparks a conversation. And when you spark the conversation, people go, wow, I didn't know Reagan did all those racist things. So thank you, Daily Wire. Thank you, all the idiots at Fox News, for making this a big issue. Thinking we're gonna win this one. This one we're gonna win. I mean, non-racist people would totally be for apartheid and be against Martin Luther King, right? And would do racist caricatures all the time and would celebrate the place where civil rights workers were murdered, right? Oh no, that didn't work? No, it didn't work. And now, more and more people know who Ronald Reagan really was.
By the way, I mean, every conservative who tweeted in support of Reagan following AOC's comments, isn't that like conservative virtue signaling?
Yeah,
I mean, they're totally guilty of doing everything that they accuse others of doing. I mean, what was the point of that? Just to show your support for Ronald Reagan? It's kind of incredible. Anyway.
So look, in the post game for the members, I'm going to talk about how I went after right-wing evangelical Christians. And the same thing unfolded. Like, can you believe this guy? They're saying all these terrible things about evangelicals. And then when I asked them questions, well, so do you believe that all the Jews will be murdered in Armageddon? They're like, what? Okay, so we'll save that discussion for the last hour of the Young Turks. TYT.com/join to become a member and get that last half hour just for the members. 2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below. Then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.